Welcome, everybody, to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom Podcast. And I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. As you know, I talk about four different types of freedom: time, financial, location, health freedom. In that light, I'm always interviewing entrepreneurs, thought leaders, creators, influencers to share those insights with you and get that message out. So today we have Mary Henderson calling in to us from Melbourne, Australia, and she is a personal branding and online business specialist. So it's going to be real. I'm really fascinated with personal branding, digital marketing, social media marketing, and converting that knowledge into coaching, speaking, etc. So I'll let Mary introduce herself and we'll get started. So Mary, welcome.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I hope your audience can get a lot out of it. And just a little bit about me. As you said, I'm from Melbourne in Australia. I'm the future you at the moment because it's Friday morning for me. But I am, as you said, a personal branding and online business specialist. And I typically help, or I should say I amplify. I don't even want to say help. I amplify very ambitious, self-led, heart-centered industry experts who want to turn their knowledge, wisdom, and skill into a go-to brand and a business. And that's the love of my life.
Yeah, it's so awesome. The internet has leveled the playing field. We're able to reach each other for fraction, no need to get on a plane. And so we'll get into it. We'll talk about first thing is personal branding and how to be an authority in your niche or industry. So tell us more about that.
That's a great place to start, Christopher, because I want to share with you that the playing field has leveled out. You're right in terms of connecting, but it hasn't leveled out in terms of how you're seen and how you're perceived. Okay. So there is a vast difference between somebody seeing you as the go-to expert and someone seeing you as noise, the wannabes, for want of a better word. What I'm seeing at the moment is that, so let me just backtrack. What is personal branding? Let's just start there. Let's just generic explanation. Personal branding is you, the human, are the business. Most simple explanation I can give you with no bells and whistles. It is you, the business, the human being, and how people interact with you, how they see you, how they feel about you. And that determines whether they want to get to know you, whether they get to love you, and eventually buy from you. There's your personal branding explanation in, a very short definition. In terms of where personal branding is going from an authority status, I'm seeing a very big shift here. And here's what I see. There are a lot of people who read 3 or 4 books, attend 4 or 5 free webinars. Suddenly, they're an expert. So they start creating content. They start putting themselves out there on social media, Christopher, and the market gets very confused, right? It's like, well, who do I believe in now? It's a bit like mass media. It's like, do I believe this or don't I believe this? So what we need to do as industry experts, if you see yourself as an industry expert, if that's what you are, which means you have accumulated thousands of hours of knowledge, wisdom, and skill set, you can do something with that currency because it is a currency. And what we need to do is not show up like all of those other, what I call textperts, because they read 3 books and suddenly they're an expert. We can't show up like that because they're shouting at the market. I'll tell you what we need to do. We need to start a much bigger dialogue, a much bigger conversation on things that matter to you and matter to the audience that you're trying to connect with so they can become a part of your ecosystem. This is what I've noticed in my own content. I've been doing this for a very long time. And even, being on social media for a very long time, I have a very big following on LinkedIn, and I've given away Actually, it's funny that I'm sharing this story because even this week, 9,000 people have accessed my free masterclasses. That's a lot of people, Christopher. 9,000 people. And what I did this week is I removed about 50% of those people from my email list. Why did I do that? Because those people I can no longer serve. I can't start the big mature conversation I want to start with people who are starting out or people who are, thinking about. That's not my tribe. My tribe are very much in that, they're already in business, but they want to expand. They want a different conversation. They don't want Mary to say 3 tips on how to build your personal brand. They want to know about, hey, if there is X going on in the world, how does that actually impact me? They're the conversations that we need to start as industry experts if we want to build our brand currency.
Very fascinating. What's interesting is, I know colleagues, they did one investment and all of a sudden they have this, they put out this, $5,000 digital course and
Yes.
I'm just like laughing behind the scenes. But what's interesting is you mentioned, really honing in, getting deep. Why is the 10,000 rule so important? What is it? And tell us.
Oh my God. Well, that for me is my benchmark. And I'm going to tell you why. It goes back to what you were just saying about building a course after reading 3 books. So, so here's the thing. If you're a specialist in one area that you know for sure, let's say it is finance, Christopher, okay? You've been doing it for maybe 30 years. You know every aspect of finance. And now you come out on the other side and you're thinking to yourself, I would love to coach people on how to solve X problem. You may not even know what the problem is that you want to help people solve, but you know that you've accumulated, say, 10, 15, 20,000 hours in the finance industry. Okay, that's currency. So we've got to take that and we have to look at that currency as data. So when I'm working with people, I'll give you an example. They'll say to me, look, I've been in the finance industry, but I'm really good at this. I've done this in my role as a CEO or CFO or COO or whatever. I know how to create events. I know how to do this. I've been doing this. I've also been coaching people. There's a lot of things that happen inside a corporate role, especially if someone's been doing it for, say, 20 years. So we have to take all of that information, and I call it data. So when I'm working with somebody, I'll ask the very specific questions to get very specific answers. And what I'm looking at is a combination of your skills, your abilities, your gifts, your talents, your value system. What are the things that you care about the most? What do people say that you're really good at? What comes easy to you? Lots of different aspects of a human being that we need to unpack. And then when you see it on an Excel spreadsheet, it looks like a lot of words and a lot of information. But then that information needs to be organized into one complex problem that can be solved. Now, this is very important because we don't convert that information into a course. We convert that information into a system. And that system must deliver outcomes, not just deliverables, outcomes, Christopher. If we can't deliver outcomes, we can't create brand ambassadors who advocate for us. Right? Do you see what I'm saying? So you always finish with a client. They're like, oh, okay, is that it? And then they go off and find another coach, but they never advocate for you. So our goal as brands and industry experts, and if you are an industry expert, you do meet the 10,000 hour rule, is to build brand advocates. Okay. Because we cannot build our brand. We can define it. We cannot build it. The only way our brand can be built is to give your clients and prospects an ecstatic brand experience that they can advocate for you.
Interesting. I like that idea of brand advocates. And, Warren Buffett and Tony Robbins, all these individuals, they say,
Yes.
Brand is your most, like, that's kind of your competitive. It can't be copied. That's
Yes.
Tell us how you can commercialize a personal brand.
Yeah, this is a very interesting one because Again, it goes back to a lot of people saying, oh, yes, I'm a personal branding coach. But the question is, can you commercialize? And this is the difference. We can define our brand essence. In other words, this is how I show up in the world. This is my look and feel. This is what I stand for. This is my color palette. And this is the problem I can solve. Okay, so we've already figured that foundation out. To commercialize it, we need to be known for something. Okay, what is that something that we're going to be known for? So when I spoke about before that when I unpack people's internal inventory, we need to turn that into a solution that can solve a problem, that can command demand and also command premium pricing. Because a personal brand, a real one that can commercialize their solution, is actually not called a coach. They're actually specialists. And when you're a specialist, you are called in to solve problems. Okay. A consultant's a little bit different because a consultant's a little bit more driven on, and more data driven. It's more about pushing, but a specialist relies on more on wisdom. And this is where we need to understand the power of this. So when my clients work with me, are they paying for my resources, the online program, which is my system, and there's frameworks in there, everything that they want is in there, or are they paying for me? They're actually paying for me, because when they ask me a question, my wisdom rises to the surface and I can answer that question with absolute precision and absolute truth because it's experienced. It's not, I didn't read it. I read it. I implemented it. I have experienced it time and time again. Now it's become my wisdom. And this is what we've got to understand. That's how we commercialize it. So the system based on all of your internal inventory becomes your solution and your service that you're selling into corporate or into individuals. And that makes you the go-to brand for that solution.
And then what sort of systems are important in setting up an online business?
Yeah. Well, this is another great question because there's multiple systems in your business. It's not just the solution. It's understanding, your content strategy needs a system. Your sales strategy requires a system. How you deliver brand experiences requires a system. We need to understand that we need to automate our business as much as we possibly can to give the outside public world an ecstatic brand experience, to take time away from us so we can focus on doing what we're really good at, which is having these type of conversations, creating, content, and building our profile so that we are in front of the right people. And then, of course, Christopher, there's the lead generation system as well. And this is where a lot of people get stuck. They start at lead generation. Oh, if I only get one client, then everything will be okay. But they never get that one client because they haven't built the foundation and the systems in their business in order for their business to work for them. Instead, it's working against them. So lead generation is a great example of why you need a system. You need layers in your lead generation strategy. And how do you systemize that? What do you have in place to make it work for you? Do you understand how to really use LinkedIn? What is your outreach strategy? What's your inbound strategy? How do you systemize that process? How do you systemize your content strategy? What are you going to talk about? And then the most important one for me in my business, and this is something that I teach all my clients, is when you've got all your systems in place and when your brand is defined, when your solution is solidified, then we need to, and all your lead generation, everything's in place. We need to embody that now. We've got to become that. So you see what people do? They start businesses and they wait. It's like, oh, hopefully, now that I'm on LinkedIn, on Facebook, all these clients are going to come rushing towards me. 12 months later, they're still waiting. 2 years later, still waiting. So that's the wrong attitude. We have to become that. That's a very important part of this process, is to self-actualize your potential. Now, why is that important? Because that's what transformational leadership actually needs. And it's a space I'm moving into quite aggressively now. And transformational leadership means that you can provide transformation to your clients every step of the way, for sure. Okay, it's not, I think I can. I know I can. I have the systems in place to do that. So, and can you see the difference even in the language? I can say, oh, I'm a personal brand, or I can say, I am a transformational leader. I transform people when they work with me. That's much more powerful than saying, oh, I'm just a go-to brand, like, yeah, like everybody else. No. So transformational leadership is an extension of industry expert. It's an extension of wisdom. And then you arrive at transformational leadership, but you've got to have the systems in place to allow you to be seen as that and for you to execute that so the client can experience it.
Yeah, man, very, very powerful, very, very impactful ideas. You talk about organic lead generating strategies.
Yes.
What are some ways of doing that?
Well, I only do organic lead generation, believe it or not. And the reason is because I like big conversations. So on Facebook, I have to do what all the digital marketers do: 3 tips to build your brand, 3 tips to do this. And I found it so belittling. I found it so, and I'm going to tell you why. My audience are mature. My audience are not 20-year-olds wanting to get rich quick. Okay, that's not my audience. My audience are established. They've got families, mortgages, they've had an established career, etc. So that's number one. And I think that a lot of your audience are also in the same situation. That's number one. Number two, let's think about this logically. There's a lot of people in the world right now that are going through a shift inside of themselves. Okay. You could call it whatever you like. Some people call it the Great Awakening, whatever you want to term it. It doesn't matter what it's called. But the truth is that a lot of people are starting to question things. Okay. Think about this. So there's a shift out in the world where people are saying that doesn't make sense. I don't know about you, but I mean, we don't have a TV in our house, so I don't watch mainstream media. I have no idea who's famous. I'm not interested. But also I've noticed a shift in my inner circle, and everyone's moving away from that as well. The conversation over a coffee is no longer, hey, what time are you getting your nails done? It's like, hey, did you hear that? Blah, blah, blah. So people are starting to question things. So we're starting to see pragmatic thinking, which is fabulous. If that is happening, do you actually think that Mary's showing up on Facebook saying, hey, 3 tips to build your personal brand in 30 days and make $100,000? Do you actually think that my tribe would look at that and go, oh, wow, that's amazing, I need that? Or do you think that my tribe's going to look at that and go, next, seen it all before, heard it all before, lies, deception, no thanks, next, next, next? So that's my thought process. So I'm saying, no, I'm going to go fully organic. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start really big conversations so I can build a tribe around a conversation that people are genuinely interested. That doesn't involve politics, and it doesn't involve religion. It's clean, right? And so organic lead generation strategies needs layers, though. You can't just rely on one platform. You really need a lot of layers in the strategy. Of course, there's all the social media platforms. Maybe podcasting is a strategy. Maybe a summit is another strategy. There's so many different keynote speaking. There's a lot of different strategies, but we have to ask ourselves, whatever my strategy is has to resonate with the audience I'm trying to connect with. They need to hang out in those places so that they can hear me and they can connect with me. That's why I love podcasting so much, because I get to speak about the things I love so much, so care so deeply about, and I write like that as well. But, you've got to go where your strengths are as well, Christopher. So that's my advice. Find where your audience hang out and give them content in the way they want to consume it. But we've got to start the conversation in a much bigger way than 3 tips to get rich quick.
Yeah. It's I'd really like this, because you're talking about, going deep and, getting to the client's, deepest desires, and not
Correct.
superficial. Very fascinating discussion. And you kind of, where you actually talked about how to really build a solid personal brand, and not less hype and rich quick. And how do people follow you, contact you, reach out to you?
please email me, Mary@Mary. You can go and check out my website, which is Mary Henderson. Please connect with me on LinkedIn and my personal Facebook, which is Mary Henderson Coaching.
And for all the audience out there, hopefully you got some really golden nuggets. Be sure to check out Mary's social media, follow her. And with that, thanks so much. And thanks for coming on to the show.
Thank you, Christopher. Thanks for having me.